Okay, so we discussed dismissive avoidance and sex. Now let's discuss fearful avoidance, because it is different and it's going to present differently. As we know, fearful avoidance or disorganized go back and forth between anxious and avoidant tendencies. I consider myself to be a fearful avoidant, and essentially the way I would describe it is living in like a purgatory between desperately wanting connection, like more than the average person, but also being more afraid of it than the average person. So you're in this constant like balancing act, like juggling act of trying to connect, but then also feeling very afraid of it. Because of that, fearful avoidance will often be very attracted to unavailable partners because in that beginning stage, the unavailable partner is going to kind of rush in and really flatter the fearful avoidant. I've talked about this in another video, but a fearful avoidant is going to have some walls and some barriers to protect their heart because they are afraid of true connection. They really want to be seen. Like their biggest need is to be like seen and heard and understood, but they're also so afraid of that. And so a secure person coming into their life and wanting to like take it really slow and things like that, that might be harder for a fearful avoidant because they are trying to protect themselves and they don't really trust other people's intentions. But an unavailable person, maybe an abuser, a narcissist, a DA, who rushes in, flattering the fearful avoidant, telling them everything they ever wanted to hear, really validating them very quickly, is going to be attractive to a fearful avoidant. So oftentimes they'll end up in relationships with super unavailable people. And then if they are ever if they do ever encounter someone who's more anxious or secure, they might have a really hard time with that because they won't really trust the behaviors of this person because it's not very familiar to them. But just like any other attachment style, fearful avoidance is on a spectrum, and it can be really from one extreme to the other, because you will have some fearful avoidants who really swing more to the anxious side, like me, and you will have others who really swing more to the avoidant side. And some fearful avoidants will be the type where they are really, really guarding their heart so much that they may not even have ever had a relationship or ever had sex because they are so afraid to let their guard down. Or you may have someone like me who has been extremely impulsive in my relationship and sexual behaviors and has gotten myself into like harmful situations and leaned particularly into my sexuality because I learned early on that my sexuality was kind of my currency for love, and that all relationships are transactional, and essentially what they want from me is sex and my body, and so I have to give that to them in order to be loved. One pattern I noticed about myself is that like when I meet a new guy, I will instantly start sending him like a lot of, sexy photos and things like that, almost trying to be validated in that way. Like, okay, this is how you get love. Like, this is how someone shows that they love you, is by validating this part of you. And so I'll be like, look at all these things. Look at this, look at that. And that's like a really unhealthy behavior. But that could be really true for a lot of fearful avoidants. A lot of fearful avoidants have had like many sexual partners. They can be very like sexually compliant. And so they may have been involved in a lot of situations of grape and SA simply because it would be scary for them to say no or to get up and leave. They would just kind of feel obligated. They may have had like a lot of casual sex. They may be more willing to be very open with their sexuality and their body as a form of currency. Or it could swing to the other opposite where they feel completely afraid to like even take their clothes off. If you're dating a fearful avoidant, I think that there are different things you could experience. I think depending on what type of attachment style you have, it'll trigger them to be different types of ways. And so maybe if you are unavailable, if you're a dismissive avoidant, whatever, they might rush into love bombing with you. However, if you are more anxious or secure, it could take them like a really long time to feel safe or comfortable with you, and they might be really, really holding back with you. I feel like a fearful avoidant because fearful avoidants struggle a lot with emotional regulation. They feel emotions really deeply. They feel things like really, really deep. And I think that fearful avoidants are more likely to be very up and down and back and forth when it comes to sex. I think that they will use it as a form of validation, but also could be likely to become passive aggressive with it or withholding if they aren't feeling seen or heard in the relationship. I also think it's likely that a fearful avoidant, if they're not feeling seen and heard in the relationship, might look to external validation sources. Fearful avoidants also, like, in order to become disorganized, you had really inconsistent attunement in childhood. And so a fearful avoidant may have had like considerable abuse or neglect in their childhood, therefore really causing this pattern of kind of like reinforcing those patterns and ending up in really abusive types of relationships, ending up in a lot of SA experiences and really just harmful situations. I think too that a fearful avoidant is more likely to use sex as like manipulation sometimes without even realizing it. Like, oh, you're not seeing me, you're not hearing me, you don't understand me. Okay, I'm gonna go post all these sexy pictures online and then let's see who sees me and understands me.